Welcome to the DraftKings wide receiver analysis for week 4. I'm Jason Gilbo, Jake Gilbo 11. With me is Justin Elick at Big Ely 42. Breaking down wide receivers for this week. And you start things off here with Antonio Brown, which I think, we just need to keep one recording of Antonio Brown and just use it each week. And we could just put it in.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just repetitive and it's lazy and it's none of those things because he's just the best and it's really not that close. And we say these things every week and et cetera, and how he makes Ben Roethlisberger look like he's a great quarterback, and he's a good quarterback, but not great. And the Chiefs are a decent defense, but to me, it doesn't matter. I mean, we saw last week the Steelers scored 3 points and Antonio Brown still just went off. Obviously, you're not going to see 18 targets like you saw last week because they were behind the entire game. But if this game is high scoring, it's possible with Antonio Brown because, I mean, he's really the only reliable weapon in that passing attack. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell back this week. So, you got to worry about him making big plays because D'Angelo Williams, sure, he had some great games, but he's not a big play threat out of the backfield. But Le'Veon Bell absolutely is. So it's definitely a spot where you could play Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell if you wanted. But, I mean, it makes sense. There's tons of value everywhere. You can just lock in Brown and move on.
Yeah, you definitely can. As you mentioned, I mean, we came over from your running back pod, and it just seemed like there was a lot of value that you can go with, and even mid-price guys to help get that kind of big play in. Fitzgerald's the next guy you talk about here is your next cash game option at 7,200. Going up against a Rams secondary that's pretty average against wide receiver ones. What do you like about him this week?
I mean, Fitzgerald year in and year out, it seems like just ends up being one of the safest options, and it really doesn't even matter how inconsistent we've seen Carson Palmer be at times, as much as I love when that happens. Last week, Palmer was just about as bad as he's ever been. Through 4 picks, was just all over the place, but still saw 12 targets for Fitz, 7 for 60, and that was the first time in 3 games he hasn't found the end zone. I mean, he has already seen 7 red zone looks this season, and this is just a guy that is just incredibly consistent. He gets looks in the red zone, and he gets looks, all across the field, and he's the clear-cut number 1. I mean, we thought over the past couple of years maybe Michael Floyd would emerge, and he's had some good games here and there, but he's not a consistent option. For me, and it seems pretty evident with the fact that he's been targeted 7 times in the red zone already. It's Fitzgerald is the guy, and there's really no secondary option here. Plus, it's a tough matchup for David Johnson in the running game.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think that's going to shift a little bit more focus on the pass. They're at home, still reasonably high total. So, if you don't believe that their running game is really going to do anything, obviously it's going to come through, Carson Palmer and Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, those types of guys. You also talk about Marvin Jones, who's we'll talk about him more on FanDuel, but obviously at a similar price tag, he's in play as well.
Yeah, Marvin Jones he's probably dollar for dollar my favorite wide receiver play on the board this week. And, we saw his upside last week. He was a guy I was on then as well. And he's seeing double-digit targets. He's got, as you saw last week, big-time upside. And he kind of just stepped in. We thought he was going to be the number 2 in Detroit. And it's not even close. He is the number 1 by far in that offense. And he and Stafford have a real nice rapport already.
Yeah, definitely. He's looking like just a solid cash game play week in and week out at this point. GPPs here, you're looking at Doug Baldwin, 6,100. Obviously, we know his upside. Hell, he didn't even catch his touchdown pass from Russell Wilson last week. So it's just surprising to see what he can do at times. But obviously, the Jets matchup, let's be honest, it's a lot more, it's not as intimidating as it used to be.
No, at this point, it seems more name recognition than anything else. Darrelle Revis, we saw what A.J. Green did to him the first week. One of the best games of his career. 12 for $180 against him, and I think it was on 12 targets, maybe 13. But he caught everything near him. Revis got burned by Marquise Goodwin the next week for I think it was an 80-yard touchdown. And then last week he was better, but you expect him to be better when he sees the likes of Jeremy Maclin and Albert Wilson and the rest of these guys. So Doug Baldwin, a guy like you said, it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball. Wilson might not be 100%, but Baldwin, I don't want to say is the only option. We saw Jimmy Graham finally, I still struggle to say he's worth anything near what they ended up paying for him. But, he's a playmaker, but he's a playmaker and Doug Baldwin's a playmaker. And we've only seen one good game out of Christian Michael. So And in the running game, I mean, good luck playing him against the Jets front seven. I think that's too tough for me to even play him at all. But, I mean, Doug Baldwin's a guy that I think, due to the perceived tough matchup, people will be off him. But I think he's got floor and upside here.
Yeah, definitely two and a really nice price tag as well at 6,100. Quite the difference from kind of those top two guys that we were talking about. Emmanuel Sanders, 6,400, coming off a monster week. And that wasn't a tough matchup. I mean, this week's much easier for him. And really the price really hasn't gone up at all.
Yeah, Sanders is another one of those guys that's seen a lot of looks in the red zone. 7 targets, tied with Fitzgerald for third most in the NFL. So he's a guy that he's shifty. You know, he can do a little bit of everything. He gets involved in the short passing game. He gets looks down the field. And, I mean, we saw last week, I mean, a ton of volume from Trevor Siemian going his way as well. So this is a guy that I would say, due to the, kind of recency bias, you'd see a high number of ownership for him. 13 targets last week, 9 for 117 and 2 touchdowns. But, Demaryius Thomas had a big game last week too. So I think some of his ownership will kind of go Thomas's way, especially because he's the bigger target, more of a red zone threat, obviously, due to his size. But I think he's a guy that, you kind of take your pick between the two. But I think that volume-wise, he's still going to see more looks than Thomas will, because I watched that game as a Bengals fan, unfortunately, last week, and he and Siemian looked really, really good together. And, I mean, a lot of what Thomas did was on that long touchdown pass while Adam Jones was sitting out. So you take away that one big catch for him, and it was an average game. But Sanders was just open all day long, and I don't expect this week to be much different.
I don't either. I mean, especially against the secondary. I mean, Tampa, as you put here, ranks 25th against the pass per Football Outsiders. So, I think it's a pretty modest team total there, 23.5. I can definitely kind of see them going over that this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of leaning that way as well.
In terms of value wide receivers, another Cleveland Browns guy, you must be just aching right now, writing these guys up. But 4,300, I don't see any real viable way to kind of fade Pryor if he's going to be basically the entire Browns offense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to the FanDuel thing. You'll hear the kind of analysis on that. He's much more expensive there. But kind of the Swiss Army knife last week, did a little bit of everything. And you and I were talking a little bit before this about I remember his days at Ohio State, and I still think he's one of, if not the worst passer that the Buckeyes have had in the last couple decades. But I'm sure I'll get some hate for saying that. But, I mean, it's just the truth. He's not a good passer. He never was, doesn't have any touch on his throws. But that doesn't matter. You get a $4,300 wide receiver who's going to throw passes potentially. And this one, he's seen a ridiculous amount of targets. I mean, you look at the NFL leaders, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, T.Y. Hilton, Larry Fitzgerald, A.J. Green are the only guys who have seen more targets than Terrell Pryor this year. So regardless of how inconsistent the quarterback play may be, or if he is the quarterback play at times, I mean, 4,300, I think you're just an insane person to fade him on DraftKings this week.
Yeah, I think so too. It's really tough. And we talked about this as well on the running back pod, but this Redskins defense, disappointing so far. It's been bad.
You're being kind in saying that. They're bad.
Awful,
bad.
Horrendous, atrocious.
Good thing they got Josh Norman though, right?
Yeah. I mean, too bad you couldn't clone him and put him at 4 other spots in that secondary.
Yeah, you gotta. It's not getting any better for them anytime soon. It doesn't look like. If you give up 27 plus points to the Browns this week, that's time to shut it down. Move to Las Vegas.
Michael Thomas here, your next guy here at 3,800, playing for New Orleans. Does this one solely hinge on Willie Snead being inactive, or can you still roll both ways?
I don't think that it's completely contingent on it. I think he'd be more of a GPP play for me, based on depending on what happens with Snead. But Snead was limited again on Thursday. It's a 425 game, so that's unfortunate for us. We'll kind of have to wait till the last minute to see. But it seems to me if he's still limited practice on Thursday, I mean, he's their young receiver. They don't have a lot of, I guess, future pieces that they're really worried about keeping healthy right now. Obviously, Breeze on the tail end of his career. This is not a good team. So I would think they err on the side of caution with guys like Willie Snead here. And even if he plays, I don't expect him to be 100%. So it seems like as of today that he's going to be limited at best. So I think that Michael Thomas is a fine option here this week. And I mean, he's so cheap that he's a very low risk guy. I mean, $3,800, $800 above the minimum. He's not a guy that you're playing that if he gets you less than 10 points, he's going to ruin your lineup. He's just the guy you plug in there, hope he can catch a touchdown, see 6, 7, 8 targets potentially, and just kind of give you some floor.
Yeah, I definitely like him a lot this week at that price, and it is pretty low risk. And you just look at this game in general, you got to anticipate Drew Brees. I mean, we know his numbers on the road compared to at home, which he's at San Diego, not good, but still a 25-team total there. You got to anticipate that they're going to be coming from behind or trying to play catch up for most of this one. And you also talked about if Snead does suit up, you do have a nice transition over to Cole Beasley at 3,900, who, should get a tick up in terms of production. I mean, he's already been targeted quite a bit this year.
I mean, Beasley's a guy who's seen a ton of targets already this year. Like you said, he's been one of the most consistent options. And I mean, not even just considering his price tag, but at all, 8 for 65, 5 for 75, 7 for 73 in the first 3 weeks. He's going to continue to see targets. And, Des Bryant, as they tried to make us believe they were optimistic that he could play this weekend or, anytime soon with a fracture in his knee. The Cowboys are a mess, but Cole Beasley's got great hands, and he's never going to really break a long touchdown or see red zone looks because it's just not his game. But he's a nice safe option. And now that I say that, he's going to end up breaking a 70-yard touchdown. But
you jinxed it.
I'll take that. I'm not going to complain. I'll have some Cole Beasley this week.
Yeah, I think, honestly, like DraftKings at the price, easy pivot if you don't want to feel like rolling the dice on Michael Thomas if Snead comes back. Pretty safe option there. You also talk about Tyrone Williams, who we kind of skipped over, but in that same Saints-Chargers game, another guy you could possibly take a look at.
Yeah, I mean, he's another guy who's seen a good amount of red zone looks. Obviously, options are limited for San Diego. He's seen 6 red zone looks this year. No touchdowns of those looks yet, though. Caught 3 passes. So he's a guy that I think is going to kind of he's going to end up finding the end zone. He has scored 1 touchdown. It wasn't a red zone score. I think it was a 44-yarder, but everyone's going to kind of be on Travis Benjamin, and Benjamin's not a great receiver. He's a good receiver who, by volume alone and the fact that he's a deep threat, he makes for a solid option. But if he's not catching at least 1 deep pass, as we saw last week, he caught 1 deep pass. Aside from that, I think he was, 3 for 40 yards, something like that. So I think Williams is just as safe, and he might not have the big play upside, but he's seen more red zone looks than Benjamin. So if he can catch a touchdown pass here, I think he could easily outscore Benjamin and for a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. But that's going to wrap things up with the DraftKings wide receiver analysis for week 4. Be sure to head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com to check out our great tools and content.